Good morning, students, and welcome to our ICT 7 Quarter 4 Week 1 discussion. This is Aljay Buian, your ICT 7 teacher. So for this week, we will be discussing about identify hazards and risks. But before that, let us identify our objectives first. So after going through this module or this lesson, you are expected to A. Follow OHS policies and procedures in identifying hazards and risks. B. Explain hazards and risks in the workplace. And C. Identify hazards and risk indicators as prescribed by the manufacturer. So for this week, we will be focusing about hazard identification, risk assessment, and risk control. Okay, before going to that, let us understand first what is OSH or Occupational Safety and Health. So this is a planned or occupational safety and health, or OSH is a planned system of working to prevent illness and injury where you work by recognizing and identifying hazards and risks. So you must identify the hazards where you are working and decide how dangerous they are. Then you need to eliminate the hazard or modify the risk that it presents. There are 3 steps used to manage health and safety at work when you are going into the computer laboratory. So first, spot the hazard or hazard identification. Then second is assess the risk or risk assessment, and then make the changes or risk control. Now let's talk about hazard identification. So what is hazard identification? So this is identifying all situations or events that could cause injury or illness. So meaning, as we go to, for example, just like in the computer laboratory, we need to identify all situations or events that may cause an injury or illness to each of us. So by eliminating or minimizing workplace hazards needs a systematic approach, or we need to have a procedures in eliminating or minimizing these hazards. So common hazards encountered by computer technicians and users. So a hazard is a situation in the workplace that has the potential to harm the health and safety of people or to damage plant and equipment. So these are the things or situation which may cause damage or damage to plants and to our equipments in the computer laboratory. Okay, so the situation could involve a task, chemical, or equipment used. So hazard management is a continuous process that can be used to improve the health and safety of all workplaces. Next is mechanical hazards. Mechanical hazards are those associated with power-driven machines, whether automated or manually operated. So example of these driven machines or automated or manually operated machines are, for example, equipment which is part of the system unit, the system fan, and for tools we have wire cutter. So if we don't handle these things carefully, we may be able to have a crushing, or we may be able to experience this crushing, shearing, cutting, entanglement, trapping, impact, stabbing, or puncture, and friction in the parts of our body. So that includes yung mga uh, pagkain ng makina ng ating buhok, if mataas, or we have long hair, and our clothing, it will be trapped or get crushed or get cut by the driven machines that we manually operated or automated. So next is chemical hazards. So these are hazardous chemical that can be a solid, liquid, or gas. So it can be a pure substance consisting of one ingredient or a mixture of substances. And the examples which are the cause of these chemical hazards are skin irritants, carcinogens, and respiratory sensitizers. So these chemical hazards can cause our respiratory systems any kind of harm. So those are examples of chemical hazards which can cause harm to our body or inside of our body. Now next, let's talk about electric shock hazard. So electrical hazard or electric shock may be defined as dangerous event or condition due to direct or indirect electrical contact with energized conductor or equipment, and from which a person may sustain electrical injury from shock, then damage to workplace environment, and damage to property, or both. So when we say electric shock hazard, this is physical contact or contact with any device or equipment that has an electricity coming in with that kind of equipment or mga tools. So pag accidentally nahawakan mo yung mga equipment na may kuryente, it will electrocute you or give you an electrocution. Maka-kuryente ka talaga. So dapat you need to see if the equipment that you are holding or gusto mong hawakan, it should not have a electrical hazard that may come into it. So that's it. Then now let's proceed to our CRT monitor high voltage hazard. So CRT monitors are becoming less common nowadays, but should you run into one, so it is not best to open it up. So instead, outsource any CRT repair job to a qualified CRT repair service. So a CRT monitor has high voltage anode inside it, which can carry a charge up to 25,000 volts, and it can still be holding a high charge days after the power is removed. So nowadays, we are using CRT monitors for our television or the use of our computer parts, and then if these CRT monitors have something damage on it, do not open it if you are not expert on fixing it or trying to fix something on it or repair it. So just refer to the CRT repair service or those who are expert on repairing CRT monitors, because CRT monitor has 25,000 volts on it, which can maybe kill a person if that person would have a physical contact with a high voltage of 25,000 volts on the CRT monitors. So it can maybe kill you or harm you. Now let's talk about biological hazard. So biological hazards are organic substances that present a threat to the health of people and other living things. So meaning These biological hazards are also living things that may pose threat to the health of people or other living organisms which are may have be able to have contact with each other. Then dangers can come from unclean restrooms, mold and fungus, bacteria, insect stings, animal bites, and poorly stored medical waste. So just like for example, if we have an unclean restrooms, so this may form a any bacteria that will if you enter with to that restroom, you might be able to have contact with that any bacteria or mga germs. So also it will have we also have the insect stings. So if we um, let our computer laboratory we do not clean it, it may be lived by insects. Then it may be able to sting you and might be able to bite you also. And then we also have poorly stored medical waste. So if we don't store our medical waste properly, so we might be able to have a biological hazard that will be uh, experiencing on it. So that are example of biological hazards. Then next, let's talk about ergonomic hazards. So ergonomic hazards are physical factors in the environment that may cause musculoskeletal injuries. So this includes lighting, chairs, lifting, repeating, and computer screens. So it involves our musculoskeletal on our body. So we might be able to have injury from lighting, from chairs, from lifting things, and repeating, and computer screens. So those are examples of ergonomic hazards. And now let's proceed to psychological hazard. So those that are basically causing stress to a worker. So this kind of hazard troubles an individual very much to an extent that his general well-being is affected. So workplace causes of stress include heavy workloads, lack of control over the pace of work, shift work, noise, fear of job loss, and conflict with employer. So these are just example of psychological hazards. So this is basically causing stress to a worker. So that is what we call psychological hazard. Now let's talk about safety hazard. So safety hazards are unsafe working conditions that can cause injury, illness, and death. Safety hazards are the most common workplace risk. So this includes slipping or tripping hazards, inappropriate machine guarding, equipment malfunctions, or breakdowns. So this is the most common workplace risk, which is the safety hazards, because it can cause injury, illness, or even death to the person or to the students in the computer laboratory. So the examples of these safety hazards are slipping or tripping hazards. So just like if you are not carefully looking at what you are walking with, so if you might be trip or slip into something, so it might be able to cause you injury, illness, or death. And also inappropriate machine guarding. So if you are looking at a machine or having giving or something, you are trying to see it, or someone asks you to guard it. So if you don't properly guard it, it might be able to cause some injury or illness, or might be death. Then also for equipment malfunctions or breakdowns. So pag nagmamalfunction or breakdowns yung mga computer or mga equipment sa loob ng computer laboratory, it may also bring you injury, illness, and death pag hindi nyo siya naagapan or uh, you did not take care of it carefully or so that ends our topic for this week. So thank you for listening and may God bless you on your activity. So if you have any queries clarification regarding this topic or what we discussed this week, you can call me or text me if there are some things that you need further explanation. Then you can also access this video on the GAITF LCMS platform at www.lcms.gaitf.com. Thank you again. This is Aljay Buyan, your ICT 7 teacher, signing off.